Hey everyone, what's going on? It's 2 minutes to review. It's Matt.
And it's Zach.
Longest album review in under 2 minutes wins. Getting started early this year, an album that is very highly anticipated. This is, well, you click on the picture, you should know by now. This is the brand new one from Green Day. It is Saviors.
It's crazy because I feel like it was not that long ago where we actually were doing an episode called What If, and we were discussing the history of how American Idiot almost didn't come to be. And just wondering what would have happened if Green Day never did release American Idiot. Well, shortly after we premiered that episode a few months ago, Green Day announced, hey, we're releasing a new album called Saviors. Get ready. It's gonna rock. And yeah, I mean, talk about, let me say it this way. Yes, it's highly anticipated, but I'm not gonna lie. I was a little nervous about this album going into it without spoiling too much of what I'm about to go into, just because usually you don't release albums in January if you're really feeling confident about the music. It's kind of a weird time to release music. People are still kind of, reminiscing about the year past. And by the time critics do the, best of 2023, January albums are the last that they think of. And also, let's be honest, we've talked about this in a few past episodes. The last few Green Day albums, how do we say this without being too critical? We're not that great. Sorry. In fact, go listen to our review of.
Oh, just call it a spade.
But I mean, you can listen to our past review of Father of All, Mother to hear us just pretty much give it the bashing it deserved. So, truth be told, yeah, a little nervous going into it, but at the same time, it's Green Day. And if you've listened to any of our past episodes, you know how much we love the band Green Day, how much we adore American Idiot. We've done a bunch of episodes about it specifically. How much we love Dookie. We've named it as one of the best albums in 1994 and one of the best pop punk albums of all time. We love Green Day, so we want to root for them. So here we are questioning: will Saviors give us what we want? Will it please our hungry hearts for a great Green Day album, or is it gonna leave us wanting more? That's what we're going to find out.
Is it me, or does the font on the cover look kind of like an 80s sitcom?
So, hold that thought. Because I think that's going to come into some of our reviews too. That 80s little influence that you talked about. With that in mind, Matt,
Zach,
you mind if I go right into my review of Green Day's Savior? I know, new year.
Nothing has changed in 2024.
Nope. I'm still
Let me get out
old
my
American Idiot jerk.
New cell phone stand here.
What?
Got a fancy new cell phone stand.
What? Oh my goodness.
All right.
Count me down.
3, 2, 1, go.
So there's definitely a lot to like about Saviors. Songs like 1981, they're simple, yet they have just a little intricacies, like the catchy choruses, the guitar riffs that make it enjoyable enough to really listen to. And, admittedly, the passion in Billy's vocals, which is what I've been kind of critical of in the last few records, it goes up and down. Sometimes he sounds like his snotty self, just full on engaged. Strange Days are here to stay is a great example, though, of when it just lacks a little bit of enough emotion to make me think, oh, this is more than just a leftover. But throughout the album, what really stands out to me is the guitar. Something about it just packs a really powerful punch to it, a boost of energy that really I do feel like has been missing in Green Day in the past decade. And the best example is the song Living in the 20s. Although songs like Dilemma and Bobby Socks, what I find enjoyable about those is that it's less punk and more just 90s rock. Dare I say, almost a bit of a Nirvana influence, more so than the pop punk than you'd hear of them. But then, you got songs like Corvette Summer and The American Dream is killing me. That, I say this, Dookie celebrating 30 years this year, American Idiot celebrating 20, and I'm sure they would like you to think that Saviors is a continuation of those two albums. But really, those two songs I just mentioned kind of make me, they feel more in line with an album like Warning, and even could be the answer to the question that we try to ask in that What If episode. What if Green Day never released American Idiot? That almost kind of is this what Saviors would sound like? But I will say something about this album feels much more organic than even Revolution Radio. Songs like Susie Chapstick and One Eyed Bastard, admittedly two very different songs, it just feels more natural than anything Green Day's done in a while. And to that, we should be kind of happy because a natural sounding Green Day album is better than a lot of things they've done in the past.
And we've got your time locked in. And out of 5 stars, what would you give it?
I'm giving it 3.5. There's a lot of good moments on this album. And I feel kind of like a snotty jerk in delivering my review, but Dilemma alone is a great song, actually. I actually would argue that maybe The American Dream Is Killing Me and Look Ma, No Brains are actually not great two first singles to go with, because Dilemma and even One Eyed Bastard are actually pretty good. But it's just not consistent. As I mentioned, Billy kind of just goes. I feel like there's some moment, and this is where I was like hinting about the 80s vibe. There's some moments where like, oh, cool, they're really trying to go for more like darker, kind of like 90s alt rock, heavy hitting kind of sound, and I'm digging it. There's got a punch to it. And then there's some songs that just like, all right, this is kind of like just Green Day trying to like, be the 80s rock band that they love and wanted to pay homage to. It just wasn't as consistent as I would like it to be. And I admit that partially it's because, this is the downside and why it's kind of ballsy for them to release a new album in 2024. When you're also going to be on tour celebrating two phenomenal albums like Dookie and American Idiot, it's going to be hard to not compare this album to those. So definitely a little hard to, stack Saviors up to those two albums, but still a very enjoyable Green Day album. But I'm sure we'll talk more about that after you share your 2 cents, Matt.
Yes.
With that in mind, let me get my desk dedicated to just my cell phone, because you have the stand. I have to one up you with a desk dedicated to it. I can't afford a desk just for my cell phone. That's silly. You let me know when you're ready.
Count me in.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so real quick, yes, this is definitively better than Father of All. So good on you, Green Day, for making up for what you did then, because you shit the bed. Now, moving on to this album, I'm going to say that this album is definitely something that I'm kind of surprised Green Day didn't go to a little bit sooner. I think what they were trying to do with Father of All was they were trying to ride the wave of emotion off of 21st Century Breakdown and on American Idiot. But what they did with this one is they let it simmer a little bit longer in the writing process. And it's really good that they did that, because I feel like everything is a little bit more refined, a little bit more polished than what it could have been. And it comes through on the record. What you get here is a refined political pop punk experience with the Green Day attitude, with a heavy dose of Ramones and a sprinkling of the Clash. Now, to some of you, you're probably going to be thinking, wait a second, hold on, that's some pretty big words. But if you want to hear what I'm talking about with the Clash, listen to Coma City. And I think that's one of like the highlight songs on this album. And I think one of a couple of songs that really are going to inject some new life into their live set, along with The American Dream Is Killing Me. Strange Days Are Here to Stay. And I think I know why Zach likes Dilemma so much, because I think it's the new What's Her Name. And I really think that they put a lot of effort into making this album something a little bit different, because, yeah, they do lean into the Ramones portion of their sound a little bit, like on Dilemma, Bobby Sox in 1981. But you really kind of also get a more like underground type Ramones sound, like you would hear on Mondo Bizarro on like a song like Poison Heart. So if you haven't heard that, check that out. And Susie Chapstick, let me tell you, this is a very surprising song, because this is, for Green Day, a very delicate sounding song. And it really, I think, took them a little bit more time to craft something like that. And it really comes through in such a powerful way on this album, along with a lot of the other tracks on here, including the last one, Fancy Sauce. Even though it's nothing fancy itself, my favorite lyric of the entire album on here is "Watch the evening news because it's my favorite cartoon." And I think that really kind of sums up what Green Day's album here is. It's something serious, but it's not meant to be taken too seriously.
Time's locked in. Before I let you talk, you made a lot of great points, but 2 things I want to call out. Yes, Dilemma is the new What's Her Name hit the nail on the head right there. And yeah, Susie, yeah, that's a real Susie Chapstick is a standout for me. Although I don't know if I agree with the other standouts you talked about, but out of 5 stars, what would you give Saviors?
I wanted to give it 3 when I first heard it, but the more that I listened to it on the first go through, is the more I found myself singing along to it and not even knowing the words, and that says something, right?
So this is a grower of an album, you think?
It's not even a grower. It's like a grower in the song. Like, I'd hear like the first verse, they get through the chorus, they get to the second verse, and I'm already kind of like trying to sing along to it because you can predict where things are going to fall, and it's like, why am I doing that? It's not a 5-star album. I'm going to give it 4.
You're gonna give it that high of a ranking? 4.
It's also, I would say, on par, at least for me, with Revolution Radio.
I wasn't a huge fan of Revolutionary Radio. So I actually like this album better than Revolutionary Radio, but that's not saying much for me because I felt like with Revolutionary Radio, there are some good ideas, but something about the album, there was this certain like staleness to it that just didn't feel all that exciting. Whereas this album, I actually feel like they did a really good job at making me feel like they were interested in performing these songs, that they were actually like invested into some of these ideas and having fun doing it too. I feel like the moments that shine most on this album, best for me, not to, I guess we can go back and forth here. The moments that I felt were the shining, like the highlights were when they were actually more at their bleakest and darkest, like Dilemma, like One-Eyed Bastard, or even just like Susie Secrets, which was like a lower, like, a softer, but still kind of like down-tuned song. There was almost something about it that felt so honest, and they actually were sharing their, like, it felt like Billy was actually really singing with a purpose. Whereas some of the more upbeat songs, it was like, all right, they're just trying to do a punk number here, or they're just trying to please the Ramon fandom in them.
Whenever you dive into a darker side of things, it's always a little bit more personal, right? It's hard to write a sad song if you don't know how to feel sad. You have to know that pain to kind of get to that side of yourself. But I think when they go and they start leaning into the more upbeat sides of themselves, it's all like some of the songs are a little bit more political in nature, and Billy's always about that. So it's something that's true to him. So that being said, I think they just want to write a good Green Day song. And I think that there's some of them on here, especially with the first couple of tracks, because they do feel more Green Day than a lot of the other deeper tracks on the album. Or they're just not giving the rest of the album a chance. I think that the Green Day sound is here. I also think that if you like those other bands that I mentioned, the Ramones, Clash, you're going to find some surprises here that they do a pretty good job of leaning into them, but still kind of being true to who Green Day actually are. Now, if they did it and they did it really bad, I would call them out in a heartbeat. If this album sucked, I would call it out in a heartbeat, but it doesn't. And I'm very glad for that. If they had another Father of All mishap, I think we'd be having another conversation right now other than, is the album good or not, and saying, is Green Day finished?
So I agree that this is definitely a very good Green Day sounding album. I feel like Saviors, it's like it goes in waves. It's not consistent in making me feel super attached to the songs. But his guitar work whether it's, really Billy, the whole album, I feel like he really stood it up with the guitar riffs and just the passion he's playing.
The guitars do shine through. In the bass, Mike is no slouch on bass either. There's a lot of tasty bass lines on this too.
There's a lot of tasty riffs and licks and just a lot to enjoy on Saviors.
That's why I gave it a 4. Listening to it, it's a good listen. It's not just 4-chord pounding the entire album. There's a lot more here than what meets the eye. And when I say that, I think that there's going to be new life brought into the live set. I really do think Coma City is going to be one of those songs that, they stand up there and they play the opening riff a bunch of times and Billy tries to get the crowd into it, or Strange Days Are Here to Stay, or they even opened with The American Dream Is Killing Me. Like, I could very much see like Billy walking out with like some sort of American flag type thing going on in the background with The American Dream Is Killing Me as he's walking out on stage.
So I'm glad you brought up the idea of like bringing new life into the live set, because I wanted to talk to you about the upcoming Saviors tour Green Day is going to be doing. As I mentioned earlier, after we did the What If episode about whether what would have happened if Green Day never released American Idiot, I made the comment that Green Day will never do a full tour where they play American Idiot or Dookie in its entirety because they don't need to. That's how big they've become. Well, a few,
were you
very
wrong.
well shortly after. Well, and here's what's really more fascinating, and I can just like get really like down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories here. So shortly after we premiered that, shortly after we did premiere that episode, they announced the new album Saviors, and they also announced that they're doing a tour of Smashing Pumpkins and Rancid. And while they, were promoting it, they teased that they would be celebrating American Idiot and Dookie, those anniversaries on this tour, though they didn't really specify how. Well, the week of release of Saviors, that's when they formally announced, so we're going to not only perform some songs off Saviors and a bunch of other hits, we're going to perform Dookie and American Idiot in its entirety on this tour throughout the year. Which is just like what here's also side note. Here's where I feel really sad and old. If they had just announced they're doing one album in its entirety with one opener, I'd be like, oh, that sounds awesome. To me, it's like, wait, 2 albums in its entirety plus 3 openers. Oh boy, that sounds like a long night for me. And I feel like a jerk saying that out loud because American Idiot is still one of my favorite albums, but I'm just like, oh, that's a long night. That's a long, and they're playing the closest show to Matt and I is Queens. I'm like, oh, that's,
So,
that's where I'm at in my life.
Coffee was invented for a reason.
Yeah.
B, schlepping all the way out to City Field.
We've done it. You and I have done it together.
We've done it. I've driven out there more times in the last 6 months than I ever want to drive out there. But for Green Day, I might be willing to make the drive one more time.
Okay, interesting. So you are considering doing
It's a possibility. I mean, there's some other shows that have been announced too that I kind of have to lay some money out for.
Well, exactly. That's the other problem. But so going back to what I was trying to, the reason why I brought this up, do you think the fact that I almost feel like, again, without going too much in the conspiracy theory realm, that they almost were like teasing that they're going to celebrate it initially to see like, all right, so let's see how the singles get, like how people react to the singles and of Saviors, because maybe we won't do the full albums if like people like the new album enough. And I almost feel like the fact that they like are now going like, yep, even though we have a new album, we're going to perform these old albums in its entirety. It's almost them admitting like, all right, we can already tell Saviors is not garnering the same response to justify like only dedicating like a good chunk of the set to Saviors. Do you think?
But didn't they announce that like a couple of weeks ago though?
No. This was the first time that they confirmed, no, we are performing these albums in its entirety. They teased that they were going to be celebrating those. Like if you look at the tour poster, they call out the fact that like, yeah, American Idiot turns 20 this year. Dookie turns 30, but they never clearly said we are going to be performing both albums in their entirety. And I almost feel like they were waiting to be like, all right, so either we'll do like a special medleys for each album, or we'll really like dedicate portions of the sets to like deep cuts to certain like from the albums. But like it wasn't until this week that they were like, yep, we're doing this entirety. And I almost feel like they saw like, okay, ticket sales are not really moving. The Smashing Pumpkins are not as much of a draw for us as we thought. Let's pull out the big guns.
Shocker?
Well, yeah. But admittedly, I think also I'd be more inclined to go if it was not. I love Smashing Pumpkins on albums. Live, they are not good. Sorry, guys. Side tangent. They are not good live. So I think that definitely didn't convince me to like consider going to see Green Day this summer. But do you think though that that's almost them admitting that like, all right, Saviors is not gonna be the huge game changer of an album that Dookie and American Idiot was for us? Or do you think it was just this was the plan all along?
I think it was the plan all along. I think it's also way, way too early to do a hot take to say, is this album as important as Dookie and American Idiot? Especially American Idiot. Dookie, you can kind of see the writing on the wall maybe a little bit, right? Like when that album came out, that was something special. Like that immediately took over. This We're in a completely different landscape. So I don't think it's going to have the same impact as Dookie. Plus, Green Day is already huge. But I think to see the importance of this album versus those two, you're going to have to wait at least a year or two to see if people are still talking about this or if it's making the buzz like American Idiot.
So I do kind of want to disagree regarding you make it sound like American Idiot took time to build buzz. Whereas
No, no, no,
I,
no, no, no.
Mhm.
Like the legendary status that is American Idiot. Like it's taken time for it to become like legendary. Like everybody knew it was good. Everybody knew it was one of the best Green Day albums. Everybody knew it was something special 6 months, a year later. Not to the status that it is now. Like now everybody reveres that album as like one of the best albums of not only like the decade it came out in, but dare I say of all time.
So I that's where I disagree with the time frame that you mentioned there because I feel like leading up to even just the release of American Idiot, the buzz and anticipation and like just the word on the street about the album was already like boiling hot to the point that like by the time the album finally came out, it was all that like rock fans could talk about. And it I mean, I would say that American Idiot like almost even before it got released was already a bona fide hit. Like the title track alone to that album was already massive. And then Holiday and
And
Boulevard of Broken Dreams was just red hot too. Yes, I don't know if I really agree with the type, but to your point, going back to Saviors, yes, I could agree that it will take a little bit more time and to also to your point, it's a different landscape. It's we're in the streaming era where it's kind of
yes,
hard to like really pinpoint a success or not anymore.
I really think that when it comes down to it, you're gonna have some of that heat cool off, right? So the album comes out in 2004, and there's no streaming music. You have TRL for what it's worth at
You
that
have
point.
MTV, which is still a
Right, it's
determining
still a
topic, a
thing,
factor. Yeah.
and you had to listen to regular terrestrial radio to get your music fix. At no point in time, outside of buying singles, could you get access to music except for illegally downloading it, and even that was getting kind of hard in 2004. The buzz factor on an album and it being hot and being a hit is of course going to explode once it comes out because the sales are going to go through the roof just based on hearsay alone. On this, they dropped the singles a while ago. And if people aren't hot on a single, they're going to be like, I don't know. And then the more that you release, it's almost like you either have to release hit after hit after hit in order for people to be excited for the album, or it's going to just fall on its face. And I think that's kind of what you might be seeing here is you might be seeing people getting fatigued over the singles and not wanting to go into the album. I think it might take time for people to go back to the album and listen to it in its entirety.
So I also think you could do huge case studies about just the change, like just everything that changed between 2004 when they released American Idiot to 2009 when they released 21st Century Breakdown. Like those 5 years. Funny also, we're talking about the 20th anniversary of American Idiot and 30th of Dookie. It's going to be the 15th anniversary of 21st Century Breakdown.
And that's how much they care about that album.
Well, that album, I feel like you could look at that album in a lot of different ways. I mean, I think, I think we discussed this a little bit also when we talk about concept albums. Um, I mean, when they were finally getting ready to release 21st Century Breakdown, people were still buzzing about American Idiot to the point that they were, on top of them trying to promote that album, they were also trying to promote a Broadway show about American Idiot. So like it was still like fresh in people's minds. But then you also look at 2009, and by then you had YouTube. I mean, like of course streaming still wasn't a thing, but suddenly buying music digitally or even just listening to it on YouTube was more acceptable than, or more common than buying a CD. Whereas in 2004, it was still physical copy over even digital purchases on iTunes. And then also in 2009, like MTV really lost a lot of its cred for helping break albums and bands. Fuse was trying at the time, but they were not really like, it was the landscape for even how to engage with fans was drastically different. And that was only in a span of 5 years. And then you also listen to that album, and we can even do a whole episode just like dissecting that, because you had some songs that were like, wow, this is actually really good and like a perfect like predecessor to American Idiot. And then some songs were like, oh, this is just pure extra fat. Like I would even argue that like that was almost like the start of a downhill for Green Day, in that you can tell that they felt defeated because they were trying so hard to follow up the massive success to American Idiot, that by the time that they released it and they were getting the lukewarm responses to it, they just felt defeated and they were kind of just like losing care. I still think back to, they were performing on SNL in support of 21st Century Breakdown. Will Ferrell was a musical guest, and they did this during rehearsal. It wasn't on the air, but they released video of them rehearsing. I'm blanking on the song. It was one of the songs on 21st Century Breakdown. And they had Will Ferrell on stage doing cowbell with them just for that, like their dress rehearsal. And it was one of those songs where it's like, oh, it's a cool riff, but it's like definitely a little extra long. And suddenly, as they get to like the bridge, suddenly Will Ferrell goes, wait, this song's not over? And you can almost see like Billy Joel going, oh, it is obvious that there's extra too fat in this song, huh? Like that's almost like the beginning of like them realizing, oh, we might have a problem here with this album. It might not be the guaranteed success that we thought it was, like American Idiot. Like, and going back to, I promise, I know we're here to review Saviors, not talk about Green Day for the millionth time. But I'm bringing it back to Saviors, that I would make the argument that Saviors might actually be the most refined and passionate sounding Green Day album since 21st Century Breakdown. Because yes, there were some flaws in 21st Century Breakdown. To me, I haven't heard them sound so focused and like actually like committed to an idea on a song as I've heard on Savior since 21st Century Breakdown. Like even Revolutionary Radio, I felt it was just like, it's almost like they were just trying to go back to the American Idiot sound that, you know, they knew fans liked, and because of the lackluster response to the party rock that they were doing on the Trios albums, to me, Saviors is almost like the most confident sounding we've heard of Green Day in a very long time since 21st Century Breakdown. I don't know if you
listen to my review. The literal line that I said in the beginning was, "It's a refined."
I'm giving you compliments.
Listen to my review.
Yes, but I'm giving you a compliment. I agree with you that it's the most refined album. I'm still standing by my 3.5 star because it's not consistent. Just like 21st Century Breakdown, in many ways, it's not consistent. But it's definitely the most refined Green Day album in a long time. I'm complimenting you in your review. I agree.
Well,
I apologize if I didn't say before the refined moment. Like Matt said, it's the most refined. I apologize, Matt.
It's okay. I'll forgive you.
Well, thank you. Well, I guess it's a good way to start off the year then with a new Green Day album. But you know what, Matt? None of it matters. None of what we're talking about matters. What really matters is who gave the longest review in under 2 minutes. And I think we both know the answer here.
I think we do.
Matt, what does my time clock in at?
You came in at 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
Well, if this was a game of 3 minutes to review, I would have won. Because you came in at 2 minutes and 32 seconds. But that's not the name of the episode or game or series. So we both lose, in theory.
Well, you could be king for a day here.
Womp, womp. I see what you did there. I need to go on
It
holiday.
did.
I need to go on holiday and clear my mind.
Hey, do, 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 hey.
The representative of Epic Footnote Productions has the floor. I give this album 3 stars, man. Well, what do you all think? Have Matt and Zach gone crazy and lost the point of this episode?
Yes.
Yes. Do you agree, though, with our takes on Saviors? Do you think it's the best sounding Green Day album in a long time? Or do you not hear what we're hearing? Or do you have just different thoughts? Do you think we're crazy for multiple reasons, but specifically about Green Day in general? Are you going to go to the Saviors tour? Which album are you more excited to hear in its entirety, Dookie or American Idiot? I'm with the American Idiot camp, but you've heard enough of us talking about that. Tell us on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter. I finally remembered to say that correctly. Threads, if you're still on there. God bless you. TikTok, any social media platform, really, at Epic Footnote. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel to hear a ton more episodes like this, especially about Green Day. We got a lot of episodes about Green Day, actually. Maybe too many? You be the judge. And a major thanks to Lucky 13 Beard Co.
Log on to lucky13beardco.com. They have some of the best beard balms and oils that you're going to find anywhere around. They smell amazing. They're going to help you feel epic. And if you go onto their website and you find something on there, maybe even our own, dare I say, beard oil in the Lemmy, in a tribute to Lemmy from Motorhead. It smells of bourbon, tobacco, cola, and leather. It is some of the finest stuff on the market for beard balms and oils. We're giving you 10% off of anything you put in your cart, so not just ours, but anything that they have on their site. Use the code EFP10 at checkout. Lucky13, the number beardco.com. Use the code EFP10 at checkout.
What would a Green Day beard oil smell like? What do you think?
Green apple and smoke,
Oh,
because they're burning down the government.
no, but that is brilliant. We need to talk to Ed. That's actually brilliant. You know what else is brilliant? Buying merchandise to help us support to continue doing episodes like this. If you go to any link in the bios of any of our social media platforms, you'll find the link to other platforms, but also to where our merch site is, where we're selling t-shirts, hats, coffee mugs, hoodies with our cool logo on it. Great way to not only support us so we can keep producing episodes like this. Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you join us for another episode real soon.
See ya.